Hey guys, good to see you again. Um, it's been a couple weeks since we recorded last, and we've had a lot of questions coming in about two big topics. So I thought maybe we could take a few minutes and just talk about those two. Sound good?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. So how do you make sure that kids don't cheat? That's that's basically the first question. Online distance learning, and you have major assessments and tests. How do you make sure that they're accurate?
Should I go?
I see you guys both
I
looking at the
think
other
I
one.
think Jonathan needs to go first with this.
I know that neither of you are making eye contact with me, so
Yeah,
Well-
right. See, that still works online.
it does. Jonathan, do you want to go?
Well, the best thing is to make your own tests, first of all, if you can. If you make your own tests, that means that it's going to be something that a student can't just type into Google and find the answer. Because on some of these online courses that are created by big curriculum providers, like Florida Virtual School, for example, they sell a ton of online courses, and you could find the answers to everything in a Florida Virtual School course.
You are 100% accurate about that, and I would double down on that. Making your own stuff is the first obstacle to making it difficult to cheat. It's a hassle, it's extra work, but if security is your issue, you have to author your own stuff. I know it's a big hassle, but Jonathan's right. When these guys sell huge volumes of curriculum, that means thousands of people have taken it. That's a big peer learning group, and there's lots to be shared online.
That's and for the teachers in Central Asia right now, you guys, I taught in the schools in Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, and the students even when internet was hard to get, all the students knew the answers to the tests. You guys know this. so with online, if you use the state standard tests, your students can cheat if they want to. Yeah. And in fact, it might be the students who do the worst on the test who actually know it best because they're actually trying to do their own work. So
well, I think that if you're making your own tests, or even if you can modify an existing test, having written responses is also preferable to multiple choice, where they're expected to think about something and then write a response that synthesizes what they read. That's always a good thing. If you have to do something that's multiple choice, most online quizzes, if it's in an LMS or if it's probably even Google Forms, you can you can click a button that will shuffle the answers so that it's a different letter each time if it's multiple choice, but then something else, and of course this depends on which LMS you use, but I know in some of my courses for geography and for history, they have question banks. And for each standard, there's a certain number of questions they might ask, but the student doesn't know going in which questions are going to be asked. So it's just a matter of, and this sounds familiar, like I talked about it very recently, or I might have posted about it in the online course, maybe in the Moodle. But when a student doesn't know which questions are coming, and that makes it that much harder, it doesn't mean that it's impossible to cheat. It just means if they don't know which questions they're getting, it's going to be so hard to cheat that they would probably rather just do it the honest way. Yeah. So if we can make it such a difficult task that they would rather do the work, then that's great. It's similar to, you'll never fully secure your own property. An experienced thief will be able to find a way in anywhere and steal something if they want to. So it's not a matter of making it impossible. It's a matter of making it not worth their while, I guess. So maybe it's a similar philosophy there.
I like that. Yeah.
And he's right about that. The Area 154 program is all completely built on that concept. One, it's custom. Not a lot of people use it.
Hmm.
Secondly, every one of those little SRT things has a bank of 20 questions. They only get asked 10 of them. So
Hmm.
they don't know exactly what's going to happen or what's going to come up. It does shuffle the questions. And like you said, it doesn't make it perfect. And the one thing I wish it had was a timer, because
Mm.
it's
Yeah,
hard
that's
to
true.
see, a question and go, "Oh my God, I have to find the answer for it," when you're on a timer, because that
That's
puts
true.
additional pressure on. Now, I can imagine that that would be difficult to do if the software, if it doesn't have it already built in. However, if you're doing
Yeah.
it synchronously and everybody's on screen at the same time, and then you give everybody the test at the same time, and they're like, "Okay, you have 20 minutes to do this." That's
Yep.
it. If I don't have your file or you haven't turned it in 20 minutes, it does not get counted.
You know that. Yeah, that's great. And that reminds me of one of my the skills I've learned over the years, starting in third grade, was how to cheat. I'm I'm an exceptionally good cheater. I don't use that skill to my advantage since like sixth grade. But this I'm always thinking, how can students get by this? And there may be a way by this, but what I'm finding with my calculus and statistics students right now is I'm using Google Docs for their assignments. And I tell them, okay, you'll receive a document, a Google Doc that has the questions. And then I want you to show your work. So after each step of the work, you have to exit out of the doc and then reopen it. And when they exit a Google Doc, it records the time that they logged in and the time that they exited. So I can go back and check the exact time, how long it took for each step of the problem.
Hmm.
And now it would take me hours to do that for every student, but the students are so afraid that I have that knowledge that so far my little spot checks show everyone's doing it right, because they feel like I'm this Eye of Sauron type thing
Right.
that can see everything in the world going
Perception
on.
is reality. That's
Yeah.
exact. I mean, isn't that how
So
Reagan
so
won the
do
Cold War? He
yeah.
told them he
Well,
had a missile defense system. Didn't really, but
yeah,
Well,
that's true.
and there
Yeah.
are like, in the LMS that my school district uses, we can have timed quizzes, and that's an easy
Mhm.
thing. If you're paying for one of, like for Canvas, for example, which
Yeah.
is what we use, it's very easy to have timed quizzes. That's a common feature. But
Yeah.
I've also been using, I use Google Docs a lot,
Yeah.
like Rachel, and I had a situation the week before last where it was in an English course and two students turned in Google Docs that were the same word for word. And so
Yeah.
immediately I think, okay, they're one copied off the other. I assumed that they cheated. And so I contacted them about it and they said, well, actually we worked together. And I said, well,
Mm.
that's normally the kind of thing you would ask me ahead of time, not
Yeah.
after I've already
Yeah.
basically busted you. But when I went through the revision history of each Google Doc, I could see the contributions of each student. I could see which student put
Nice.
in which answers. And I could see that they
Yeah.
roughly contributed about the same amount of work. And so I kind of let them off with a warning, like, okay, next time, just let me know if you want to work together
Hmm.
and work it out. But in that case, it seemed like cheating. It was only a little tiny bit cheating. It was, I mean, they both did work. They both,
Yeah.
were meeting the standard. But uh, if you can use a Google Doc as an assessment, depending on,
Hmm.
what your content is and what the standards are, that it does, because it records everything that every student does. When you look through the revision history, and I made a video about that, it's in the Moodle. So if anybody needs a reminder on how to find
Hmm.
revision history, it's in there in
Yep.
Moodle. But yeah, Google Docs will tell you
Good.
everything that every student contributed and at what time.
that's great
Cool.
burden of proof.
Yep. Yep. And once you explain to the students that you have this type of knowledge, uh, like students don't know what how much Moodle knows about them, and they don't know how much Google knows about them. So it shows in that presentation, if you send out a message to one or two students, like, hey, according to my records in Moodle, you haven't logged in for 3 days, and send them a little screenshot. The word spreads, and suddenly you're the magic teacher who everyone's afraid of. So that's not my ideal teacher image, but it's better than some things. So
Oh, but you handled it well. You did
yeah,
it. You're like, by the way,
yeah,
you need to be in class. It was the same similar thing. We have a tool here called
yeah.
Go Guardian. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but it was something our district
Mm-mm.
bought, and it provides information on what tabs the students were using during the duration of the class. So I can
Nice.
pull this thing up and
Yeah.
I can look at, well, for example, today I had a girl, Megan, who was on her fifth period history class the entire time she was in my class. So she was doing work from the previous
Nice.
class 80% of the time. So I
Yeah.
sent her an email and I'm like, you're going to personally hurt my feelings. You keep doing this. Oh, and the email I got back was just poetry of apologetics.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, this kind of leads to the other question that's been coming up a lot between teachers. So through the LMSs and the like LMSs and Doodle and everything, we can see what our students are doing, but our administrators can also see what we're doing. So how do you, how, so you guys are in different school districts in the States. How, how do your schools handle things like the differences in contracts or required face-to-face hours or things like that when you're teaching online compared to with when you're teaching face-to-face? Do you have different contracts for online teachers? How does this work? And
Well,
yeah,
our
and I don't
our
know if any
school
of your
doesn't
examples
really
will trans.
our school doesn't have online like an online school. So what I
Good.
have seen is that with online schools in Southern California, they have sort of this balance where either you have less students but you deal with them in a face-to-face environment, or you have double the amount of students and then you're online. So you have this sort of give and take of quantity over the quantity of exposure
Oh
to the
wow.
student. And California, there's a
Okay.
school, I'm trying to remember what it was called, but the average teacher has 280, 300 kids in their roster. But right now, our school district has
Yeah.
just set up a time period of during the morning. Here's where your face-to-face time, and then at some point, and it wasn't delineated how much office hours time you had to have online where kids could come and ask questions. There wasn't a number given, although I think there should have been.
Sure. Hmm. Okay.
We have a
So just sorry, Jonathan, can I just clarify to make sure I understand? Because there was a little glitch from my end, at least, when Tori was talking. So, Tori, you're assigned a set number of students, like 280 students if you're face to face, but
It's
if
the other
you're
way
online,
around.
it's double that. Okay.
Yeah, so right now
Sorry.
my
Yeah.
my roster normal. I'm in a normal face-to-face caseload, so I have about 160 students, and that would be normal if I was at school face-to-face with them on a daily
Okay.
basis. Online schools have much higher teacher-to-student ratios because the assumption is
Ah.
they don't need as much face-to-face contact because they're supposed to be self-starters or they have a parent at home that manages their activity.
Okay.
So there's
Okay.
more of an expectation for us to reach out to the students because we don't have as many online students.
I got it. Okay.
well, we
Great.
have our school district is pretty big by Alaska standards, but our department of just online teachers is not that big, although it is growing. So there isn't a set like number of students that is considered full time. I think that I think it basically if you have more than 100 online students, you're considered full time, roughly. But we all have a lot more than that. It'd be nice if I
Okay.
had like 120. Then I feel like I could do my job really well. Um, and it also depends, and this is also because it's informal and it's not set in stone at the
Hmm.
moment. Your student load depends on what you teach. So I know we have a
Okay.
teacher in our department that teaches like typing and like computer applications and things where they don't need to do a lot of teaching. It's all pretty automated.
hmm
And I know she has probably over 300 students.
Yeah.
For
That makes
me,
sense.
I'm teaching English and social studies, which require a lot more um, discussion with students and a lot more like giving detailed feedback on their work and working with them to
hmm
revise their writing and things like that. I have like 180 students.
Wow.
And I feel like that is still too much.
Yeah.
Because as Tori was noting, in the bigger states with bigger districts and bigger schools, they expect that these students are self-starters who have help at home and so on and so forth. But a lot of my students don't have anything like that. And they've never taken an online course before. And so it takes me a lot of time to work with those students and to just teach them how to be online students. Because I think that because of this year's springtime, when everybody shifted
hmm
online, it it caused a lot of people to think that an online course is basically just a Zoom meeting every single day.
hmm
And so when there's not a teacher there showing them everything to do step by step, they're struggling because they had this introduction to online learning that was not really conducive to learning how to take an asynchronous course.
hmm
So I have to kind of retrain a lot of people, and I'm still in the process of doing that a couple of months into the school year. Uh, and uh,
hmm
and a lot of that
Well,
is
that
dealing,
makes sense.
we're having, our whole department is having meetings strictly about plagiarism and things like that because it's something that didn't really used to be a problem. Now it's a big problem because we've got so many new students who don't really know how to do the
hmm
online asynchronous thing. And so they're trying to take the easy way, the quick way out.
Yeah.
So it's just going to take time and patience, a lot of time. But so to answer your question, depends, it depends on what you teach
Yeah.
and how time intensive that subject is per student. Um, Otherwise, it's like if it was like the way it was last year, I could probably be a full-time online teacher with hopefully only 100 students, and that would be lovely. But um, but it's not. But I can still manage. But what administration needs to understand is that, especially with something that requires a lot of teacher feedback, the bigger your student load, the lower the quality of your work. And
Yeah.
there's a direct relationship between that. And just the same way there would be in a face-to-face classroom.
hmm
So you can't automate everything.
Yeah, that's true. And in an online environment, you really have to give personal feedback to every student. Where at face to face, you hit every student every and it's okay. But you don't have to talk to every student every day. Online, there's more of this sense of this, I don't know, this expectation of interaction that's tough to manage. For those of you guys, like all of you watching this who are in Central Asia, um, you are you are now, by virtue of being in this program so long, some of the leading educators in online distance learning, and bring this to your the department heads, to your directors, to your ministers of education. In the U.S., it sounds like from California and Alaska, especially, they're looking at the number of students a lot more than the number of classes. They're looking at, they're not looking at, I didn't hear either of you guys mention like 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night hours. That doesn't make any sense
Mhm.
for online distance learning. So try and get those expectations on the table. Like these are things to talk about.
I would venture a
Yeah.
guess that to really adequately understand the distance learning thing, you have to be willing to understand that the work hours are going to be wonky. Um, you'll end up doing work a couple hours on the weekend. You'll answer emails at 8:30 at night. I think it's the nature of being at a distance that makes the fluidity of the process part of what makes it great,
Yeah.
but also part of what makes it challenging to teach. And without any kind of defined parameters, at least for the teachers to, if they want to go above and beyond, that's one thing. But to at least to give them some sort of ground expectations, I think would be
Yeah.
beneficial.
Totally agree. Yeah. Jonathan, anything extra you wanted to add?
Well, that just that if I were making recommendations for
Oh.
administrators that are new to this, I would definitely be, I would try to avoid overloading teachers, especially if online teaching is new to them as well, because the teachers will experience burnout and they will stop being effective. So, I mean, like for me, I'm saying like, okay, I have 180 English and social studies students. But for somebody who's new to online teaching,
Mm-hmm.
if you were teaching those subjects, I would say like 100 to 120 would be like an ideal number, because that way they don't feel so pressured and they can because they still don't have everything figured out as teachers, it would give them time to get everything figured out and to give the students the time and attention they need so that the students themselves can be successful, because
Mm-hmm.
it takes a lot of back and forth between students and teachers.
Yeah. Thank you. So, and just one last point I wanted to throw in before we wrap up this video is all this discussion is based on the idea that you already have instructional design happening before the course begins. So if you are in an emergency online learning mode where you found out on Friday that starting Monday, all of your classes will be online, then this type of counting students, that type of thing is important, but also the number of classes you have to design for these students is great. Like if you have 100 students divided over 17 classes, that's a lot of design work that you're being asked to do. So this is all with the assumption that you've already designed the course. If the courses are ready to go online before the classes begin, we're looking at 100, 150 students, that kind of that range as sort of the max I'm hearing you guys say is really suitable for a long-term perspective. So
Sustainable would be
sustainable.
yeah.
Sustainable. Yeah, not suitable. Sustainable.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I think
And
that the type of student kind of plays into that too. If you have a lot of
yeah,
self-starters, kids that can manage
yeah,
themselves or are being managed by parents, that number in the class can be bigger. But if you have
yeah,
kids that need to have their hand held most of the time, then the effectiveness, the effective coefficient goes way down, assuming those students aren't as skilled or as self-motivated or as managed.
yep. And thank you guys. And I think this is a good place to stop, except for one last announcement. Hey, in case you're watching this from Central Asia and you notice the guitars behind Jonathan's head in all these videos, it's pretty easy to find out why Jonathan has guitars back. Use your internet, find him online. He's really cool. He has skills that I do not have. Right-handed, left-handed
Yeah,
guitars.
both
It's
of us
awesome.
don't have that. I don't
So,
have that either.
so just like the best, if you want a little extra joy in your life, and invest at least 5 to 15 minutes in finding Jonathan Crocker and listening to his stuff.
Wow, getting the
So
plug. Nice.
there you go. Yes.
I
And
didn't even
subscribe.
ask for that.
And please like and subscribe
Like and
and all that
subscribe.
stuff.
J.
All right.
Croc.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye.